Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Southwest Virginia fishing report with Matt Reilly. How are you, Matt?
Man, I am tired, but I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm getting there. Yeah, I guess you've become like the Jiffy Lube man, getting your oil changed every week.
Yeah, exactly. I really don't want to know how many times I've launched my boat or how many miles I've driven in the last month or so.
Yeah, it's almost like Southwest Virginia is almost slightly ironic, right? Because you've been down relatively close to me fishing cicadas. You're telling me you're, burning up the road heading back from East Tennessee, so you kind of haven't even really been home, right?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I have a very understanding family.
Well, there you go. It's important. Well, in cicada, periodic cicadas only happen every 13 or 17 years, so you got to have your priorities, right?
Yeah, I mean, or like every 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how far you're willing to drive.
Which sounds like you're willing to drive quite far. So, we were kind of talking before we started recording, it's kind of been a little bit patchy kind of, let's just say Southern Virginia, North Carolina, East Tennessee on the cicada front. Some people have a ton of them and some people don't really have very many at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected to a large degree. That's just the nature of the bugs. They have a very specific, each brood has a very specific range. And for the most part, it's pretty well understood. But there are still places, and we've seen a couple, in fact, some of the heavier, areas with heavier distributions for brood 19 that have, not been, very much on the radar. But there's that. But yeah, some of the areas I had expected to find some heavier concentrations were kind of patchy and didn't really seem to be maturing into much. So we kind of hung around for a little bit and then hit the road again and found some other stuff. And that's kind of what you have to do if you want to find the best fishing that you can. But thankfully, I mean, I'm exceptionally lucky in the sense that I have clients that'll do a lot of things that I ask of them and trust me on that stuff. And I don't get a whole lot of opportunities these days to just hop in a car and drive off to someplace I've never been before for a week. So it's welcome for sure.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, right? It kind of makes me think about like fishing the salmon fly out west that, as this periodic cicada thing kind of keeps going, the fish are going to get pretty satiated on them. I mean, kind of what do you have to do kind of as the season wears on? You got, they're looking up, they're looking for the bugs, but, how do you get, fish that are, getting kind of fat and super happy to eat?
It does happen. I think it depends on, I would say, well, I mean, the two primary motivators for that are the volume of bugs and the volume of fish. If you're fishing a big body of water that's just got a stupid number of fish and a stupid number of bugs, they can spread that wealth out pretty well. And it takes quite a while. I mean, most fish will just continue to eat while the biomass is there. But there, I have run into places in the past couple of weeks where there were a lot of bugs and frankly not that many fish eating them. And which is, to be clear, it's common early on in a periodical cicada emergence. But it usually matures to a point where you do have a lot of fish eating these bugs. And found some places where they just, there were, some big grass carp or catfish or something eating them and not much else. And, you'd hit some big blocks of time where there's just not a whole lot going on, even though there's still lots of bugs on the water. Some of the best periodical cicada fishing I've had has been in places where you get out and you can, there's an obvious presence of bugs, but there's, it's not super crazy heavy on the water because, if there's a ton of them on the water, part of the reason is because they're not getting eaten up, so seeing fewer bugs on the water and fish cruising around and eating them is really kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah. And, I guess we're saying we're expecting to kind of see this kind of be heavy for maybe the next 2 to 3 weeks or so.
I would say 3 weeks is certainly a stretch, and it kind of depends on where you are. Um, it tends to last for 4 to 6 weeks. As a general rule, the lifespan of an adult periodical skin is closer to 4 weeks, but they don't all come out at once. It's kind of there's a bell curve there. So, in a lot of places in the South, the first couple bugs started popping kind of late April. And if you have bugs hatching for a week or two, growing and none that puts you at, early first week of May or so. And then, 4 weeks after that puts you to early to mid June. So that's kind of what I would expect. And, again, it depends on where you are. Emergence timing has everything to do with weather, specifically ground temperature, and microclimates are a thing, and latitudinal gradients and weather and temperature are a thing. So it's not a homogeneous thing across the country.
Got it. And of course, the other story in our part of the world is we've had a fair amount of rain, right?
That's right. The rivers in my neck of the woods have been full to high to blown out for the last couple of weeks. Almost no matter where you look, short of some tailwaters. And even like before we hopped on the phone, I was looking at the gauges in some of our trout streams in the mountains, and they're up to kind of marginally wadeable right now, because we've had pretty heavy rain about every 3 to 4 days for the last couple of weeks, and it does look like it's drying up here in the coming week or so. So that's a good thing. But yeah, I'm glad to not necessarily be home right now.
Yeah, it's interesting too, right? Because where you are in Southwest Virginia, so much, varies just based on which side of the mountain the rain falls on. But sometimes you can get some of that stuff that's in the Smokies, and it can really mess you up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, for one, the New River watershed, the head of it's in Western North Carolina. So that's certainly relevant. And then, yeah, we're really not too far from the Smokies. So if we get those big systems that are kind of moving west to east and they hang on the mountains right there, they can very easily impact our area too.
Yeah. So I guess, whether you're fishing for trout or smallmouth, I guess the clue is maybe, fish on structure until the water kind of drops out a little bit. But what do you think folks should expect to see on the smallmouth front once the, give it another 2 or 3 days and things kind of start to come back into kind of more seasonable shape?
Yeah. I have been smallmouth fishing a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. And, as I would expect, we're kind of progressively seeing spunkier and spunkier big females, post-spawn fish that are just recovering fully and chasing food around, and then fewer and fewer males sitting on nests. So that's a good thing, because one, it makes fishing a little easier because you don't have to dodge big nesting areas and stuff like that, and two, you just have more happy, aggressive fish in the system. And water temps aren't crazy hot yet. We're still in what I call the spring. We still got a fair bit of a streamer bait fish bite ahead of us. So, yeah, it's good fishing for the next couple of weeks. And if nothing else, hopefully this bit of rain kind of sets us up for not dreadfully low flows through August and September.
I'll remind you that when you tell me you've been dragging your raft over rocks. But at any rate,
Well, I don't have to tell you that. You can just assume that's the case.
But I know that's good news for you because, even though people love to fish topwater, I know you really, it's like so many guys that guide for smallmouth, they really just can't let go of that streamer bite.
Yeah, it's I mean, I would say it's almost the opposite. Sometimes people, as soon as it starts getting warm, people want to hop on the top waterfront, and we've talked about it before. You can there's usually a window, early to mid to late. Kind of depends on the timing of the spawn, but it's usually you know early through late May where topwater bug fishing, popper fishing can become pretty effective. And I think really what it is a lot of times is just people tossing bugs on top of nests along the bank. And, nothing else seems to be working that well because they're streamer fishing and they throw the fly at the bank and the fish kind of follows out, doesn't eat. They're like, oh, it's not eating. And a lot of times that can just be a male that's just kind of escorting your threatening bait fish away from its nest. But if you splat a bug on top of it and don't move it, they'll come up and eat it or suck it in or grab it or whatever. And, it kind of creates this little bit of a oh, bug season's happening early kind of thing. And like I said, while that can be viable, it also don't necessarily think it's the greatest idea. And then there will be basically until mid-July, there's going to be some foraging events that distract the fish from topwater flies. And that's not to say that you can't have some fantastic topwater fishing through, May, June, early July, but non-game bait fish, spawning activity, post-spawn feeding activity on the smallmouth front, and crayfish molts kind of late June, early July will all be things to consider. So, I mean, streamer fishing is definitely not in the rear view. And I would say to anybody fishing between now and what I would call the real start of bug season, sometime in mid to late July, if things aren't going on top, there may be a reason, and you may see a switch to some flavor of streamer do you a lot of good. So kind of just pay attention to what you're seeing and what's going on around you. Don't be too hard-headed on that front.
There you go. Good life advice too. And
well,
we know that folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or DM us on social media, whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag, and we're going to drawing for some cool stuff from Matt at the end of the season. And Matt, I would imagine at this point, barring cancellations, you're probably pretty well taken care of until October. But you want to let folks know kind of what you have available and where they can find you and all that kind of good stuff?
Yep. Yeah, all my smallmouth dates are spoken for at this point. But I'd say the next major thing is muskie season, and that I'm probably going to get in the swing of that probably the last week of October, maybe the first week of November, and we'll roll on through early March. But my website is mattreillyflyfishing.com, and my phone number is on there, my email's on there. And however you want to reach out, I look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, and don't wait until they put the pumpkin spice latte in Starbucks to book your dates, or you'll be fishing next year, right?
No, yeah, that's the truth, man.
Yeah. So well, listen, folks, as I always say, you owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Matt.
Thanks, Marvin.